Hello noble ones and welcome to Metatron's Academy, the channel where we explore how to learn languages in the most fun and effective way possible. And today I'd like to talk about how language learning and cultural learning are intertwined. Oftentimes when we think about learning a language, we focus on the grammar, pronunciation, and vocabulary. So if you know how to say sorry, you know how to say hello in the receiving or target language, then you feel like you're making progress and you're learning the language. Thing is though, and this is one of the things I used to tell my students when I was a full-time professional language teacher and coach in the several schools that I've taught in, was the fact that if you don't spend time learning the culture and also learning the mentality, the way people think, in the country where they speak the language you're trying to learn, then you'll end up making some terrible mistakes and you'll also find yourself in some pretty awkward situations. And in some very dramatic cases, you might impede communication altogether. And since communicating is the one target when it comes to learning a foreign language, you might want to pay attention to this. Okay, but without spending too much time into the theory, let me give you some practical examples. And I will give you these examples in Japanese, Italian, and Mandarin Chinese. Now here is something that happens in Japanese when, for example, you give a gift. And this is something that has happened to me while I was living in Japan. I spent 4 years in Japan after I graduated from university, Japanese and Mandarin being my major and minor, respectively. So normally when you give a gift to someone in the West, so let's say that you buy me an object, an item, a Game Boy. I'm a 90s kid. I would say that 99% of people will say, "Oh, thank you so much, that's so kind of you. You didn't have to." But at the end of the day, you accept the gift. Now, in Japan, it is considered polite to actually reject the gift. So if you give a gift to a Japanese person, don't be weirded out by the fact that they might actually tell you, daijoubu desu, Like, they will try to reject it. And they're not doing it because they don't appreciate the gift, or maybe they're trying to build a wall, or they don't want to get too familiar with you. No. They're just trying to be polite. Now, what could be really strange sometimes is that it is considered polite culturally to reject a gift up to 3 times in a row before accepting it. So imagine that for a second. I'm buying a book. I'm giving it to a Japanese. The Japanese says, daijoubu desu. Yeah. And then I insist. I say, daijoubu desu. これはプレゼントですよ。どうぞどうぞ. And they keep saying, daijoubu desu. And they keep doing this. Like, when you reach the 3rd time, as a Western, I'm actually believing it. Or at least I don't now because I know, but maybe I'm misreading things. No, you're fine. It's just their culture. Now, here's another situation. How they use thank you and how they use sorry. Still in Japanese. Then we move to another language. Let's say you're in a scenario when you're walking around the street and a Japanese person, like an elderly lady, drops her brolly. She drops her umbrella. So you pick it up for her and you give it back. Now, if this was in the West, most likely the person would have said, "Oh, thank you. Thank you so much." But in Japan, she'll say sorry. She'll apologize for it. She'll say, sumimasen. Why is she apologizing? Well, she's apologizing not because she did something wrong per se, but simply because, well, she did drop it, so her being careless put you in a position where, to be nice, you actually had to pick it up for her, and so she is now at a disadvantage towards you, and therefore the best way to express that from the perspective of the Japanese culture is to apologize. And you will notice that there are a lot of situations where, in the West, we would thank, well, they apologize instead. Now, the reason why this is important is because if you are in Japan and you use Japanese words, but you use them the Western way, it's going to be a little weird. And you can be as fluent as you want. If you don't speak naturally, you will never be like one of them when it comes to your ability to speak. So if someone, again, does something for you and you just say thank you, you say, arigato gozaimasu, and you keep saying this arigato when the Japanese don't, then your Japanese is not authentic, is it? And this is why I'm saying learning a language is not just changing a skin. You don't just keep saying the same things, but just changing the words. You want to know what they would say in that very situation, and this is how you reach the highest level possible, which is the most natural way of speaking. We have spoken a lot about the Japanese. Let's move to Chinese now for a second, although what I'm about to say actually applies to Japanese too. I just want to give you examples in another language. Another characteristic of Eastern Asian languages is the fact that they have the tendency of not accepting compliments. In the sense that in the West, if someone were to praise my English and they told me, "Hey Raf, your English is really good," I would say, "Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Appreciate. I've been studying really hard." So you accept the If you tell a woman you're beautiful, she will probably say thank you for it. In both China and Japan, instead, they have the tendency to either decline the compliment, reject it completely, or redirect it. So if I was speaking Mandarin and someone told me 你的汉语说得非常好, I would reply, 哎呀，不行不行，说得很差，还是你的英语说得比较好. So what I did that, I said, oh no, it's not good, it's not good. Your English is comparatively better, or comparatively really good. So basically, I'm rejecting the compliment and I'm also redirecting it. So I'm saying, oh no, it's not me that it's good, it's you. This is the most natural way to do that in both languages, Chinese and Japanese. And if you don't, if people tell you, 日本語立派ですね, and you say, ありがとうございます, it's weird. Same way in Chinese, if someone told you, 你的汉语非常好, and you say, 我知道. It's kind of weird. And these are not even extreme situations, but there are extreme scenarios where maybe you're trying to translate something like an expression. Something like time flies and every cloud is a silver lining. Let's examine these two. Now, time flies has a very similar counterpart. Like in Italian, we say il tempo vola. In Japanese, I would say 時間が経つのは早いものだ. So they have very similar expressions. Time flies, not a big deal to translate, but every cloud is a silver lining, in the sense that even when something bad happens to you, there is still a positive aspect to it. The very famous idea would be, if I break my leg, it's not a nice thing, but if because I broke my leg, I didn't go to work and then my company exploded and I survived, there is a silver lining there. There is your silver lining. For instance, if you tried to translate literally every cloud has a silver lining in Italian, you would have to say, ogni nuvola ha un contorno d'argento. It makes absolutely zero sense. So if you translate that, and Proverbs, for example, work similarly. If you try and translate these expressions in the foreign language and you don't know the actual equivalent and you just try to swap the words, and we are in the situations where we're talking and I'm telling you, oh, you know, I didn't take that exam, but I think it was better that way because then I had time to study more and then I read a couple more possible questions and then those were the questions that actually I was asked, so the exam went very well when I tried it again after 2 weeks. And you tell me, I tell you all of this in Italian, and you tell me, ogni nuvola ha un contorno d'argento. I'd be like, come? I would have no idea, unless I know the expression in English, I would have zero idea what the heck you're on about. So how do we say it in Italian? We say, non tutto il male viene per nuocere, which literally means not all the bad or the evil comes to hurt you. That's the expression. You either know it or you don't. This is again a great example as to why learning the culture and learning to know exactly how people think, how people express themselves, and in what way they use vocabulary that, yes, you might know, but perhaps you're not using correctly, makes a ginormous difference in the qualitative level of your communication skills and how good of an interpreter you can be and how good of a communicator you may be. Now, of course, you could say, well, that's great, but it sounds pretty advanced. Like if I'm a beginner learner, where can I find all this material that could tell me, hey, these are the 30, 40, 50 most important and most typical things that people get wrong when it comes to the cultural approach to language learning in, say, Japanese, Mandarin, Italian, and what have you. Well, here is the thing. I do want to make a dedicated series onto the cultural approach to language learning for each of these languages. So if you're interested, let me know. Share this video. Let me know in the comments. And if this idea goes well and this video performs well, I'll absolutely begin with episode 1 and it's going to blow your mind. Regardless, as always, if you have questions, let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining Metatron's Academy.